You can't touch your face though.
Yeah, no, I can't touch my face. My
We're live
haircut.
now.
I've got a lockdown haircut. So
Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are on this planet. We're here on Open Water Friday with our host, Ned Denison, locked down in Cork, Ireland, and Ram Barkai, locked down similarly in Cape Town. Go ahead, Ned.
So I'll give a brief introduction and then Ram will go over to you for a longer introduction. So my name is Ned Denison. I'm a marathon swimmer with more than 50 epic swims, and I'm also currently the chairman of the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame. I know Steve and Ram pretty well, so I'll be the host today. Ram, could you give us a rambling introduction, please?
my name is Ram Barkai. I grew up in Israel. I've been living in Cape Town for probably most of my adult life. My passion is water. In the last 20 years, my passion got very cold and moved into the ice. I'm an ice swimmer. I'm a semi-marathon swimmer because I swim 10 to 20 kilometers, but not 50 and 60. I'm the founder and chairman of the International Ice Swimming Association. Yeah, the rest you'll find out.
So Ram, let's start with some of the not so cold swims to start off with. I had the pleasure of being in Cape Town a couple of times with you guys, and one of the most interesting events that you had was the Freedom Swim from Robben Island. And I'd like you to talk to people about that swim, and I'd also like you to talk about the outreach program you do to local kids, local schools, local townships, to try to get more people involved with this traditionally Western European white sport of ours.
So Freedom Swim is another one of my babies. It's the swim from Robben Island, which is about 7.5 kilometers from mainland. And the significance of Robben Island is the fact that it's a prison island. Used to be a leper colony at the beginning of the 20th century, became a political prison island, and later on become very famous because Nelson Mandela was there for most of his 27 years. And it was the symbol of freedom of South Africa, is that island. Freedom Swim is a swim from Robben Island to mainland. It's only 7.5 kilometers. So for you marathon swimmers, it's a short swim, but it is a cold swim. And the average temperature of the swim is 13 degrees. We can have some waves and currents. And we do have some fish in the water that probably scare Ned more than us. We don't notice them. The Freedom Swim is interestingly that you ask, because in the last few weeks I have decided to change the format of the swim going forward because of the weather. It's to celebrate the South African freedom. This is why we hold it in April, because the 27th of April 1994 is when South Africa New Democracy started, and Nelson Mandela became our first democratic president. We also have a trust, SEAL Trust, which I kind of started when I used to wear a suit and a tie, and took over when I left the business area. And we're basically helping to development swimmer. In South Africa, when we refer to development swimmer, we refer to swimmers that live in areas where they don't have access to pools, or they need to commute to pools and they can't afford to come to the sea. So there's one specific club, Finnish club, that We looked after first Freedom Swim. We had 4 swimmers. There were 60 of them in the last Freedom Swim, doing relays, half. So we have very good relationship with them, and it's part of our. I think in everything that you do, you have to give something back and do something good. Makes you feel good.
So
The Freedom Swim, yeah. Carry on, Ned.
So I was going to say, if I go back far enough, Robben Island was a leper colony. Swimming from Robben Island in a wetsuit was a type of leprosy when you first started. You were as welcome to the traditional sport in Cape Town as somebody with leprosy. You had a lot of barriers to break down, and the wetsuit was one of them. Talk to us a little bit about that history and the resistance to wetsuits, and kind of where you are today.
I wish I could tell you that we resolved the issues, because we had a meeting about this today, interestingly enough. But I think we're making progress. It's interestingly enough, when I was introduced to open water swimming, wetsuit was frowned upon and was in the world of triathletes and Ironmen and people that don't really like open water swimming. So it did take me a while as well to understand that with the help of others, that swimming is swimming regardless whether you swim with wetsuit or fins or goggles or whatever. As long as you swim, it's okay. There's obviously swims that where you are judged by swimming without a wetsuit, or swimming without no accessory, or swimming without touching boat, or swimming according to certain rules, which I respect and I understand. We have very strict rules in ice swimming. But I've learned that seeing so many people who, specifically in cold water, which we have all the time, we don't have warm water ever. 13 degrees, 14 degrees is kind of our comfort zone. 16 to 17 is warm. And I think before the lockdown, we were swimming here at 10, 11 degrees. That's what we had for the last 2 months before lockdown. We had 10, 11 degrees. And if you want to swim and you want to do 4 or 5 kilometer session, that's what you have. I've seen so many people so scared of the water, coming into the water with a wetsuit, some of them with a pool buoy and fins, even with snorkels, into the open water, and slowly gain confidence. I remember there's a few of them, they still come to me and said, Ram, I don't have a wetsuit today. I said, wow, where's the wetsuit? I said, I left it at home. I'm going to swim without a wetsuit. And then a few months later, they said, I'm hooked. And then sometimes when the water goes to 9, 10 degrees, they put on the wetsuit. It's fine. I don't know if I answered your question, but in principle, cold water is a hard environment. Not everyone likes the cold water, and not everyone likes the cold water for a long time, or can handle the cold water for a long time. So I, through old age and lack of wisdom, I developed much more tolerance to wetsuit and it's very important to me to see people swimming rather than judge them by how they're swimming or whether they swim with wetsuit or not. If they want to swim in the ice swimming has its own rules, and like the English Channel, yeah.
So it's one of the things that I think you and I and Steve would all appreciate. If you go back 10 years ago, and you'd say, well, maybe there's 500,000 people doing open water swimming, but interestingly, there's 5 million people doing triathlons.
Yeah.
You're going, how do those numbers work? Aren't the number of swimmers greater than the number of triathletes? And no. They're different. They're kind of a special breed. And I think particularly for what you folks have done in Cape Town, for reaching out to the I'll call them disadvantaged communities, the people who don't have access to swimming pools, to bringing them into the sport has really been an interesting thing. I think it's been a good thing. And if I look around the world, the programs that opened up and welcomed wetsuiters have absolutely exploded with interest. And as you say, some people start in wetsuits, go to togs, they go back again. And as long as somebody's willing to bring some cups of tea, I don't really care what they wear in the water, and we respect them all. The total number of people who were in the last Freedom Swim Ram, all the relayers, solos together, rough numbers.
So the last Freedom Swim was supposed to be a few days ago.
The one before that.
Yeah, the one before that, about 200. I can't actually remember. We probably had about 50 wetsuiters. So in Freedom Swim, we have a solo naked or skins and wetsuit. And then we have a half, which I introduced a few years ago, which became very popular for people that can't take the cold for too long or the distance. We just basically drop them in the middle of the ocean, 3.5 kilometers, and they swim. So some of them with wetsuit, some without, and the relay, some with wetsuit. So I kind of don't look at the numbers, wetsuit or not wetsuit. At the award ceremony, we distinguish between the non-wetsuit. The non-wetsuit are always going to be the elite because they have the tougher challenge. But we award everyone, wetsuit, non-wetsuit, all the same. And at the same time, there's a lot of new non-wetsuit or skin swimmers that used to be wetsuit. They done Robben Island in a wetsuit, and then a year later or 2 years later said, okay, let me give it a try without a wetsuit. So it's a feeder. I think it's a feeder channel to open water swimming.
And when you first got involved in Cape Town and did your first Robben Island, I'm guessing maybe 30 people a year swam that.
Yeah, probably less. It was about 25, 30. It was a huge event. It was 13 degrees. It was so cold. I nearly died.
and interesting, flash forward, you're putting 10 times as many people in the water in one day that used to be in for the whole year. Just talking about some of the explosion of the swim. Staying with longer swims, Ram, just give us a highlight of the places you've been in the world to do some longer swims that weren't cold or weren't too cold. I know for sure you were at Rottnest.
Yeah, I've done Rottnest, and I didn't put zinc on, so I basically couldn't sleep on my back for 2 days. And I had one of these, I don't know if you remember the Speedo swimsuit, like zebra, basically white and blue stripes.
Yeah, bad idea.
So you can imagine what happened to my backside. I had zebra there for like 3 days. That was Rottnest, was very nice swim. I'd love to go back. Beautiful swim. I swam the Sea of Galilee. Again, it's not an ultra marathon, but it was 22.5. It's a tough swim just because it's fresh water and the water temperature, unless you do it in the winter, which I haven't done yet. We're supposed to do it in 3 weeks' time on the way to the Arctic, but that's also got cancelled. It's fresh water and it's very hot. The water is 30 degrees and the air temperature gets to 35 and it gets to you. It's very nice fresh water, so when you're thirsty, you basically just, like a humpback whale, you just open your mouth and hydrate yourself. The water is clean. Other long swims, I don't know, we do some swims in Langebaan when we try and qualify for English Channel or whatever. So we did, we just do 6-hour swims. So we probably 24-kilometer swims. I've never done anything English Channel or North Channel or anything like that. I think maybe if I started swimming earlier in my life, but you never know. We were supposed to swim in Manhattan in a few months' time, and that's got postponed as well. So we'll see.
And
I can't remember other long swims. Dead Sea?
Making your transition from the cold water of Cape Town and marathon swimming to the ice. Bring us back to the early days, back when you guys were sitting in buckets of ice, thinking and talking, and a few of your early crazy adventures before we get to the current ones.
That's in some way, it kind of happened by curiosity, which I'm sure a lot of extreme swim sports starts by some mad, someone who have curiosity about challenges. And I think it was when I came back to South Africa from Japan and Hong Kong. I spent there 9 years. And then I was into open water swimming. And within about a year, they closed the Indian Ocean due to too many shark attacks, and canceled all the events. So we basically had one option to swim in the Atlantic, which at that stage was considered very cold, and only few can swim in that side, and only when the water is very warm. So we started swimming in the Atlantic, and I think at that stage I was actually swimming with Louis. It was Louis also discovering the cold, and we were training together before he went to Norway and then to the North Pole, Antarctica.
This is Louis Pugh for everyone.
Louis Pugh, yeah. And there were a bunch of us that were fascinated with the cold. It's a challenge. So to do Robben Island was a challenge just because it's generally cold. We did it, I think, at 15, 16 degrees the first time. And then we said, let's do it at 13. And then we did it at 10, 11, which is quite cold for 2.5 hours. And we managed, and we realized that we can manage the cold. And I think by chance, I saw an advertisement about a new trip to Antarctica, and I got hold of Patrick, who runs these trips. And I said, I'm coming, I'm in. I always wanted to go to Antarctica, but any chance we can do a swim? And he was a like-minded med one who said, sure, why not? And we found a place to swim. It was a long story. It took us about 2 years to sort out logistics. It's not that simple, inland Antarctica. But I ended up in Antarctica and I swam there. And I think when I came back, or after the swim, what blew my mind, because I considered myself a normal person with a healthy sense of madness, I said, if I can do that, some other people can do that. I realized that I don't have any genetic mutation, etc. I'm just strong-minded, and I trained for this. And I came back and we did another swim, which was 2.3 kilometer. And that swim, I wasn't in a very good state at the end. It took me to the limit. And then I realized that there are limits in the ice. And I thought, and then I started doing, in that year before Antarctica to Lake Zurich, I'd done a lot of research. I was very fascinated with Linkox, with what Louis did, and all sorts of stories about swimming in the ice. And I realized that there is very little information out there, very little documented. The temperature of each swim vary between 3 degrees to 9 degrees, which we all know now that it's water and it's ice and fire, 2 and 9 degrees. Distances varied, condition varied. So I thought, let's find out what can people do, what can we do, and institutionalize it or establish it. And I'm a purist in some ways. I like one of my attraction to ice is that it's clean, simple, pure. And I said, let's make it very simple. 1 mile, 1 kilometer seemed a bit easy. 2 kilometers seemed a bit dangerous. I thought, let's do 1 mile under 5 degrees. And that's it. And then the avalanche started.
And the avalanche is a combination of the cachet of being an ice miler, of seeing your name on the website, of proudly wearing a red jacket with a badge on it, walking a little bit taller with other swimmers around. And it's expanded to the Ice 0 Mile, I believe, and the Ice Ironman, is it?
Iron Iceman.
No. Iron Iceman. Careful what you say here.
Sorry, apologies. And the organization, the Ice Sevens. So the organization you're now heading is called IISA, the International Ice Swimming Association. You have a professionally prepared website, allows people to register their swims. Tell us a little bit about some of the safety protocols you have in place.
Safety is a very interesting topic because safety comes, for safety you need to have knowledge and understanding in extreme sports. Otherwise you would never go into ice if all you have is safety in the mind. And it is a changing environment as we learn more. We learn from mistakes and we learn from successes. But in principle, as I always say, the ice always win. In science, they call it heat transfer or thermodynamic. It's just a matter of time before your body temperature will be equal to the temperature of the water. It can take hours. So, and it's just a matter of time before your body won't be able to function when your core body temperature drops to a certain degree. So it's very important to oversee the swimmer in every aspect of the swim. Because we're talking about temperatures below 5 degrees, it's not just the temperature, it's also how your body and your mind reacts to the ice water, to the initial cold shock, and later on when your body, where your brain have less and less oxygen and your muscle have less and less warm blood and oxygen. So the most important thing in my mind in ice swimming, never do it alone. In some ways, it's some kind of a team sport. And whenever you go into the ice, make sure that there are people around you who know what to do and can take care of you if things go pear-shaped, and things can go pear-shaped even in the pool. You can get a cramp, but if the water is 2 degrees and you're 200 meters from the shore, cramp can be lethal. So the most important thing is never do it alone and have a team that knows what you're doing, what you want to do, and understand you as a swimmer. Medicals, we introduced a medical checks before an ice swim. So I don't know if we're the first one, but we introduced an ECG checks, which apparently now a lot of other associations require an ECG. It doesn't always resolve issue or find problem, but it does add another level of safety. We have a medical, a specific medical form that you have to, and tests that you have to do before you want to go to the ice. We introduced the concept of a second. In the competition, you have a second. In a solo swim, you have observer and witness. Basically, someone, I always call it a dedicated pair of eyes, because in open water swimming, everyone watches everyone, but there are times when someone doesn't watch someone. And if something goes wrong and no one watches you, it could be the end. So in the ice, it's always important that there's dedicated pair of eyes that watches you all the time, doesn't watch the birds or the waves or the boats around, or I know girls in bikini in the ice, but watches you. And so we have the second. We introduced a safety belt, so everyone that's swimming in the ice have to have a belt around them. We did find that when someone needs to get out of the ice and they can't pick them up, I had an incident in Scotland. I did an ice mile in Loch, I can't pronounce it, in Scotland, and with another guy, and he stopped. I had 300 meters to finish. I finished the swim, and when I finished the swim, he was still in the water next to the boat. They didn't know how to pick him up into the rubber buck. He was slippery. Anyway, I finished the swim. We got him out. He's fine. Later on, he swam a mile in Antarctica. So we have a belt. So there is a reference, or there's a place where you can grab a swimmer, which sometimes could be dead weight, unconscious or not in control, pick him up on the boat and carry them. I can talk about safety forever, Ned. I think it's something that in extreme sport, you have to be careful not to be a safety freak, because you can kill a sport. It is an extreme sport. At the same time, you have to learn, and not just by yourself, from the knowledge of everyone around, all the things that can go wrong, and try and think of any eventuality and try and find a way to manage or to have a protocol. Basically, it's almost like if you go in a spaceship, you have a protocol for anything that can go wrong, because if there's something that goes wrong and you don't have a protocol, that could be the end. And the ice is dangerous. There's no doubt about this.
I have memories of being at ice events, and there's maybe 50, 60 people, and there's two people who haven't passed the small physical they give at the day. Their heart is racing, their blood pressure is too high, there's just something wrong, and they're sitting there, and they have some hours to calm down and pass a physical. But so one of the things that I was always struck by is there's often a check right before you get in the water, which is unheard of in the rest of the open water sport. The other kinds of things that come to mind is that through past experience, you don't allow somebody to try an ice mile on Thursday, try an ice mile on Friday, try an ice mile on Saturday, because there's a cumulative effect of being in the cold water, and it can have a safety implication. So there's a whole lot of those things that happen, and then I think finally there's a formality about the ice mile. It's not just you went to your local Lido in London, swam a mile, and you say, well, okay, there's my ice mile, but it's formal, it's witnessed, it's documented, and only by doing it in a place on the website.
Yeah, 100%. So the ice swimming, we kind of have strategically split it into two areas of competition and adventures. And you're probably going to ask me about the competition later, so I'll talk about the adventure side, which is the ice mile, the ice 7, the ice 0, which are basically individual achievement, where you swim against yourself. You compete against yourself and against the ice. It's not about speed. You have to do the mile. And I encourage people to do it in crazy places, in amazing places. The thing is that when you do them in crazy, amazing places, you have to make sure that you have everything right. You have all the safety there. You have your doctor or your medic and all the checks and balances. So and then the integrity part, and I always say, you know, keep the integrity and the safety in the ice, and the integrity is a massive element of sport. It's probably one of the reasons I love sport, is the fact that it's still, to a certain extent, we try and keep it pure and clean, and the best man win just because he's the best, rather than because he has more money or he knows someone or whatever. He's just the best athlete, and I love that aspect. Yeah, so the integrity is very important, to check that you started it correctly. So we have a short video of you entering the water, and I caught a few swimmers, probably not maliciously, but suddenly you see that they entered the water and they wear 2 caps, and then you question them, they have 2 caps, so you can't be disqualified. One of the reasons that I ask people to have a video of the entry, mid-swim, and the exit, because when someone comes out and you look at their time and their stroke rate, which is a requirement, you can assess how someone swam. So if someone come and say, my stroke rate was 65 average through the whole mile, and it took me 29 minutes, and then I look at the way they entered the water and the way they finish, and you can say, there's no chance that your stroke rate is 65. There's no chance that with this stroke rate you swam 28 minutes. So luckily, there's very, very, basically, probably I can count on one hand people that I caught, but it does put people on keep them on their toes to make sure that they do it properly, because for me, the integrity of the swim is as important as the achievement itself.
So I see these people who fly all over the world to do these ice miles, and then I see the flood of tears when it turns out to be a nice smile. Explain what that's all about, Ram. What's a nice smile?
A nice smile is a nearly ice smile. I've done quite a few of them. I remember Colin Hill made me do a nice smile at 5.1 degrees in his first chill swim. We did a demo ice smile, and it was 5.1, and he still made us do the swim, which is fine. Look, there's a cutoff, like any sport. There's a cutoff. You have to have a cutoff, and the cutoff is at 5.0. With swim thermometers, they all have to be 5 or below. So, you know, that I think in some way that's introduced the element of the outdoors and the adventure of the swim, that you have to find water that are 5 or below. Recently, water has been warming up, especially in Europe, and it's not as easy to find water below 5 in Ireland and in Netherlands and in UK. So if you swim a mile and the water temperature was above 5, it's a nearly ice mile. It doesn't get recognition, but it's a hell of a good training, you know. It's always, you know, it's like any unsuccessful English Channel is a hell of a good training session, so don't write it off, you know. You learned a lot. So on that note, I'll let you know that we are expanding temperature range starting from the next season. And I'm working on the new website. So once the new website will be ready, we'll be able to do that. And we will introduce another category that's called extreme cold, which is between 5 to 10. And people will be able to have competition, the same distances, 100, 200, 500. We will have record database. We will have world records, etc. in the X cold category. It will always keep the ice elite, and I think we all want to swim in the ice, but it will, in some way, like the wetsuit, it will expand the range that will allow people to swim in warmer temperature between 5 to 10 before they plunge into below 5 and 0, because the world of ice swimming is growing and growing, and we no longer just get the hardcore swimmer. We get a lot of people that just really looking for a challenge, and they don't really understand how deep they're throwing themselves into sub 5 degrees, wanting to do a mile. And it will also allow to expand the season, which means that people will be able to have competition, get fitness, and understand their time and technique before they go and to Tumen or Murmansk or Antarctica, where the water are guaranteed to be 0 degrees or less.
How many ice miles have you now done? How many continents were they? How close are you to the ice sevens?
I've only done 11 ice miles. I've done a few nice miles, probably another 5 or 6. I think a lot of ice milers, a lot of people started swimming in the ice when the ice 7 was already out. So they picked the ice miles. Well, I kind of never really picked my ice mile by continent. I picked it by exotic places, and I still very keen to swim in some exotic places where the ice is beautiful rather than clock the number of ice miles. I think I only done 4 continents, but and I was going to go in June to South America to do ice mile with Kate Steele, but who basically, that's her last to do the ice sevens. But a lot of our plans changed, and hopefully age is not going to come between me and the ice sevens.
And how many ice zeros for you?
I think I've done only one mile in 0, and I've done plenty of kilometer to 1.4 in 0 and sub 0. I think the last swim in Antarctica, we swam at minus 1.2, but we decided to only have kilometers because there are too many people, and it would have been difficult to manage that. So I didn't allow anyone, including myself, to try an ice mile. Svalbard, although it was the most north ice mile, we only could find 4 degrees there, and we searched for 2 days, but it was 21st of June, so we can only find 4 degrees. Ice 0 is hard. Even kilometer in 0 is hard. Obviously below 0 is hard, but I think...
and that extra 600 meters has what kind of impact? Is this the ice is now catching up with your body? Is it 4 times as hard to do the last 600 as it is to do the first 1,000? What help us understand how you think of that.
Obviously, the closer you get to 0, the extra 600 are becoming significantly steeper, because the temperature slows you down and hurts you much more when you're close to 0 rather than at 4.9. But I always refer to a mile as 2 kilometers, because if you look at the split for most swimmers, average swimmer in terms of speed, not in strength, their last 600 is on average 85% of the first kilometer. So the last 600 is almost similar to 850 or 900 meter in terms of speed of the first one. So when someone did a kilometer and talking about ice mile, I asked him, how long did it take you to do the kilometer? How did you feel? Could you turn around at the end of the kilometer and do another kilometer in terms of time, not distance? And that kind of puts a good sense of the difference between ice mile and kilometer. They are very different. Obviously, if you Peter Stoichev and instead of 12 minutes, you swim 15 minutes or 18 minutes, it's slightly different story. But for the the mortals, you know, like myself or Jer or Diego. I see Diego here, but he's also quite fast, you know, where we swim close to 30 minutes and I smile. It's very different. A kilometer to a mile is a very different distance.
And let's talk about that 1 kilometer competition now, which has become an age group record issue. It's become a world record issue. The competition's getting tougher and tougher every year. How did this 1 kilometer start, and how did you turn it into a global, let's keep track and let's keep records events?
Oh, interesting question. I never really looked at ice as a competitive sport when I started. My background is probably more adventurous and extreme than competitive sport. Remember, I started swimming at the age of 40, and I did my first ice mile at the age of 52, just to give you a benchmark. So what happened is that as we did the ice miles, and we start pushing, let's do a 0, let's do it there, let's do more. We started attracting, someone's got a, yeah. We started attracting, we start teasing the competitive nature of human, and we also start attracting sometimes people who come to the ice for the wrong reason. It looked that it's going to become a very dangerous sport, and in one way to channel the competitive nature of people. I think the noise comes from you, Ned, from your background. Just mute it while you're not talking. It's okay. Yeah. So to channel the competitive nature of the human nature in the ice, we decided to change it from distance to speed, and that's when the 1 kilometer came about. I thought 1 kilometer should be the minimum distance to make it challenging. I know a lot of people can swim shorter distances in the ice. I think most people can swim 200 meters in the ice, even Steve. Maybe one day I'll be able to get him there. But kilometer is more challenging. Even 500 meters starting to become challenging, but kilometer takes a regular swimmer, competitive swimmer to a new place rather than an old place. So we started a kilometer. Then I looked for a venue, and I think the first venue we had was Christoph in Burghausen. I think that's where we had in 2014. We had the first 1 kilometer competition, and it was very interesting to see how people compete in the ice. I remember the board meeting that we had when I wanted to introduce the 1 kilometer, and the discussion that we had about the fact that we don't really know. We know how people swim in the ice. I smile, they get in quietly and they swim and they push, but they don't really sprint. Now we're introducing competition. We're introducing another level of anxiety before a competition. We introduce a race between a swimmer to other swimmer in 0 degrees. And we had no idea what it's going to do. It was completely new territory, you know. Some people said, Ram, they're all going to get a heart attack within the first 100 meters, and that's the end of ice swimming. And yeah, we were very nervous. And we made it very limited to experienced swimmers, and it went very well. The next one we had in Murmansk, the world champ. It was 1 kilometer in 0 degree, and I think at that stage we had about 45 people doing 1 kilometer. And from there it took off, it became kind of the standard. So if you don't mind, I'll give you some news again. I'm sure Stephen happy to get some news about ice swimming. So we expanded the World Champions and the World Cup distances to a few other distances. And we're not scared of being different. Ice swimming is swimming at the end of the day. And ice had another layer and dimension to swimming, but it is still swimming. But we're not scared to be different. And the distances in the next World Championship, which means that in each one of these distances, the winner will become a world champ and we'll have world record. And now 1 kilometer, 500, 250, and 100 free. They're all free. We also introduced 100 breaststroke as part of the world champ world record because the Russian love their breaststroke and the Czech and everything. So we got to give them a chance. They've done very well for us and support of our sport. And we have the 4x250. So these are the distances that now we're going to have as world champ, world record, starting from the next World Championship. Hopefully that virus will allow us to do that.
And help everybody understand, take Murmansk, for example, one of the most northerly Russian cities, inaccessible by bus or train from anywhere. How many people end up in Murmansk and swim? Rough numbers, because I don't think people understand how big this is.
Well, the last world champ in Murmansk, I think we had 140 people, or close to 140 people competing in the 1 kilometer, and that has to go quick, because people get in 5 minutes and the other people get in. Medical tents, doctors, recovery area, etc. We seed swimmers by speed, not by age. So you compete. You basically compete against your the same speed. I think we had, I don't know, we had a few hundred swimmers and many more spectators. I can't remember the exact number. We also had live streaming, which worked very well and is being introduced in all our World Cup competition. So we had, I think we had about 90,000 views on the live streaming after the competition as well. It is in some ways, every now and then, I realize how big it got when I get when I get a club from Iran want to join ice swimming, and I think, where the hell the guys swim in Iran? And they send me evidence that they live in the mountain and they've got a small lake and they've got a club and they swim in cold water and they heard about ice swimming and they want to get involved. From Morocco, they found ice swimming. New Zealand, in Mount Cook. The Australian found some places in ski resort. In South Africa, we've got a place in a ski resort where the water temperature is 2 degrees. Spain found a place in the north. It's amazing. It's almost just about every country. Sorry, and another thing that we have, addition to the rules that will become effective from the next season, is that we allow now to have indoor ice swimming. Until now, you only were allowed to swim in an outdoor, naturally cooled pool. And there is a possibility of having an ice swimming competition in Dubai, which we can't resist. And if they can put a ski slope indoors and create a 50-meter pool and take the temperature down to 2 degrees and have a race, why not? It would be exciting.
And are you still holding one of the top 2 or 3 age group records for the 1K yourself?
Why are you rubbing it in, Ned? So
I know
for the
you. I know
listeners,
you used to. I'm just asking if you still do.
so for the listeners, the only 3 competitors in my age group is myself, Ned, and Rory. And Ned luckily doesn't like the ice anymore, so he's no longer in the current in my age group records. And Rory now holds number 1. I hold number 2. And every 4 years, we change age group, and then Rory is 1 behind. So I quickly take the world record for 1 year before Rory come and snatch it again from me.
You need to do something about that guy, Ram. You need to sort him out.
Yeah. It's fine. It's an endurance sport, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I have a question. You talk about safety, very, very important. You talk about thermodynamics, having a second, all very important. But what I really like is how you and your colleagues are pushing the bar. What we thought was impossible, you, Henry, Karma, Alexander Bryland, etc., are really pushing the bar. And I remember there was a swim in Siberia. Not only was the water cold, the air temperature was minus 33 Celsius. Can you take us to some of those? I mean, we can't even imagine that, but you and your colleagues were there, and just describe how cold and how bitter and how difficult it was to do a swim, but you did it safely.
At that stage, there were only 3 of us who swam a kilometer. Okay, I'll take you back to Tumen. Tumen, it's one of these places like Antarctica that you have to swim in Tumen to feel how brutal the ice can be. Murmansk is probably the second place, and Antarctica is probably because it's beautiful, remote, and the water can go to minus 1.5, whatever. But Tumen is in, if you think that Murmansk is far away, inaccessible, blah, 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 Tumen is about 5 notches further away from Murmansk. It's in the middle of Siberia. And because it's not close to the sea, it doesn't benefit from any Gulf Stream or anything. And the air temperature in the winter can go to minus 45. So they have to hold it when it's not too cold. When it's not too cold, it's usually minus 20. And when we swam, there was minus 33. If you didn't grow up or you don't live in places where the temperature go down there, minus 33 is a scary, it's seriously cold, as we call it. It's properly cold. You can't spend too much time outside, even if you're fully dressed and properly dressed, unless you're moving and look after yourself. The video cameras basically work for like 2 minutes, and then you have to put it back into your jacket because your video camera and the phone and all your camera basically freeze, the battery freeze. So now think about having to take your clothes off to basically a Speedo and goggle and a cap and jump into 0-degree water and swim. And when we got there, I think it was myself, Karen and Ryan. We've done an ice mile before, but we never seen anything like that. It was December. So December, the temperature is 30 degrees. We took a plane, took us 36 hours to get to Tumen. We suddenly opened the door, it was minus 33. It's probably the scariest swim I've ever done. When they called my name, I swam before Kyle and Ryan, and I walked to the pool. They picked up Andre, and who was competing with Alexander Brelin. They swam 1 hour and 6 minutes in 0 degrees. But Andre had to be taken. 4 people had to pick him up. He couldn't walk, move. He was fine. He's a superhuman. You know, these Russians, they make in Siberia. They are completely different animals. And we had to jump into this water. What fascinated me about this, Stephen, is that I never thought that I'll be able to breathe in minus 33. So it's one thing to have 0 degree touching your skin and minus 33, and it was windy as well. It was wind, about 10, 12 knots, which as a swimmer, you know, it's very unpleasant when the wet back is cold. I didn't know what's going to happen when you breathe minus 33 degrees straight into your core. We only swam a kilometer. And interestingly enough, nothing terrible happened. By the time that minus 33 air got to my core, it was warm. The body has its own mechanism to protect itself, etc. I swam, and I had, we actually spoke about this before. I had 2 guys, Ryan and Kyron. We all watched each other walking up and down the pool, counting the strokes and watching every length. It was a new territory. I mean, literally, we had no idea how that's gonna end. But we knew that we're gonna come out of this before it ends. So if there was any sign, and it's something that we discussed for about an hour before the swim, we had our strategy about stroke rate, about behavior and everything. And when I swam first, I said, guys, if I get to this and that, you take me out. Even if I scream or anything, you take me out. I have 0 room to make my own decision about the swim once I get into the water. I'm in your hands. And it was good because they took this responsibility very seriously. Yeah.
Just for the viewers, particularly in ice swimming, although in marathon in its own way, if you start a swim at 60 strokes a minute and halfway through the swim it drops to 50 strokes a minute, you are typically in trouble. It's typically time for the swim to be over and you to get out. Ram, we only have a couple of minutes left. Talk to us about the drop. Talk to us about the various ways of recovering after a swim, from the sauna being draped in towels to no sauna and walking around in a cold field, stumping your feet and waving your arms. What works for you?
So the sunset is kind of sunsetting in my eyes. It's an interesting area, and many times I tell people that swimming is only part of the adventure. The recovery is an integral part of the swim, and the swim is finished when you recovered. You might not be warm, you might not be 100%, but your core temperature is on the rise. Your brain get warmer blood and oxygen, and you're gonna be fine. Then the swim is over. Without getting too technical, when you, with a core body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius, you go into 0 degrees, probably within a few minutes, your skin temperature goes to about, probably to about 2 to 4 degrees when we measure that. And your core body temperature is starting to drop. But it, interestingly enough, it retains the heat until the finish of the swim. We just done a research in the UK. Most swimmers after a kilometer, the drop in core body temperature is about 1 degree while you swim. Your body managed to generate heat and protect you. Obviously, after a while, it will stop. Once you come out and the recovery starts, and that only happens about 2 or 3 minutes after you come out. So when you finish the swim, the first 2 or 3 minutes are very critical because you don't feel the cold and you can still get into a car, get taken to a warm place. You've got probably between 2 to 5 minutes before you drop in the roller coaster. You know, if you know a roller coaster, when you start, you sit down and then you go up slowly, 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 slowly. And when you finish the swim, that's how it works. You go slowly, slowly, and suddenly you say, oh shit, am I going to drop through this abyss? And then you drop into this abyss. And what happens is that the cold blood from your extremities start mixing with the warm blood. Your body circulations open up, and the cold blood, or the cold mixtures, we call it, start coming back into your core. And it doesn't only go to your core and drop your core body temperature, it also goes to your brain, which uses a lot of blood and affect your judgment and your breathing and a lot of other things. We call it the after drop. It has a lot of names. Technically, it's the after drop. And yeah, there's various ways to recover from that. I think one of the most important things in my mind and my personal experience is to know that it's coming, to anticipate it, and kind of look at it straight in the eye rather than run away from this. I think I compare it to other sports. If you go downhill in skiing, if you're scared when you go downhill, you're going to fall. If suddenly you get to a rough patch in open water swimming, if you're scared of the wave and the current, it will get to you. So you have to basically get through this patch. You always get through this. It can take between 10 minutes to some people can take an hour. There's various techniques to warm up. I think it is to a certain extent personal. People like various techniques to go through a very personal, tough experience. The important thing is to rewarm your body, not to do it too quickly. It's too dangerous to do it too quickly. So to a certain extent, it should be managed and monitored that you don't recover too quickly. There are various techniques, like you said, Ned. The Russians have their hot towels, which we call it a wet recovery. Water conducts heat much faster than air. So when they put hot, wet towels on you, it feels wonderful. But for some people, feel claustrophobic because they get hot very quickly. So they prefer a dry sauna where you recover slower, but you don't have the water on you. Don't get into hot water for at least the first 5 to 10 minutes until you stabilize. Because getting into a hot bath or hot shower accelerates your recovery and can cause havoc in your blood pressure and your heart rate, etc. So the first 10 minutes have to be managed to recover slowly. My preferred recovery after 10 minutes, I go and stand in a hot shower. When I say hot shower, it's not hot. It's probably I start at 14, 15, but it feels like boiling water for me. And then I slowly heat it up until I'm nice and warm. The most important thing, again, just like the swim, don't recover unsupervised, because it is a dangerous space in the swim. Your core body temperature usually can drop, especially if you swim a mile, and if you swim a mile in 0. If you drop 1 degree during the swim, it can drop a further 4 degrees during the recovery. It's a significant drop, and it can happen quickly. And it's fine. We have thousands of people that managed it. It just have to be monitored, has to be supervised. Don't do it too quickly, and don't be scared. As they say, don't panic when you panic. Everyone panics a little bit in recovery. Don't panic when you panic. Breathe, control your body reaction to this. And I keep my eyes open. I never close my eyes. I try and keep eye contact. And I know that it will take me 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. And suddenly suddenly my sense of humor will come back. And when your sense of humor comes back, you're in the safe zone.
My problem is always getting all 5 toes in the sock before I pull it all the way up. It's always my challenge. You get 3 or 4 toes in, no problem at all. and it feels like it's somebody else's foot. So there's no feedback loop telling me the toes aren't in there. There's just the pulling on the sock and it's not coming up.
Socks. So the interesting thing is that as painful your hands and your feet in recovery, they are actually the least important parts that you need to worry about. You need to worry about your head because it's your brain and there's a lot of blood vessel close to the surface, and you need to worry about your core temperature. And I tell everyone, don't worry about your feet. They're going to be sore. Your hands, they're not going to fall off. Nothing's going to fall off. I promise you. Worry about your core temperature in your head. You'll be fine. It's all going to come back eventually.
So Ram, we've taken our hour plus a little bit. I want to thank you very much for your time, and just to reassure you that while the world is slightly crazy now, things are starting to open up again in Europe, and while your plans for May are probably ruined, June, July, August, September, there's a real possibility some of those things are going to happen for you.
Thanks. I saw Cork is not cancelled, so we're counting on you.
Cork is not canceled. We're in for July. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Cheers. See you in the ice.